Soap making is an expensive hobby, one that can be difficult to pursue when you've got bills to pay. That's why I've written up 9 life hacks that'll help you save heaps on all those terrible soap making expenses. I've even included a bonus hack for you all because
I love you!
Before we get to the hacks, I feel obligated to mention that since some of these hacks involve ingredients, always be transparent with your customers and ensure you're following the guidelines set out by your state, province, or municipality. Let's get hacking. Hack number 1. Skip the micas and use Crayola watercolors instead. I know, we're starting strong. I chose Crayola watercolors because they're cheap, they're accessible, they're non-toxic, and water-soluble. Choose whatever color you wish, and then wish there was an easier way to get it out of the pan. Once you have your crumbles, you can either grind them into a powder or dissolve them in water. I'm going with the latter because I was born in the 90s and therefore don't have a mortar and pestle. You'll want enough water to saturate completely with pigment without it being diluted. For 1 pan of watercolor, that worked out to 1 tablespoon of water for me. Then you'll want to leave it in the water for a couple hours so it can Wicked Witch of the West. Now, I must be candid. I replaced the water in my lye water solution with watercolor soup, and it seems like the binder and the watercolor reacted with the lye. As the pioneer of this profound technique, I decided to push through even though it looked like a disaster because my motto is to waste your resources since you've already spent the time setting them up. Those soapy soups get put in the closet to regret ever existing. We'll see how it looks in a couple days. In the meantime, I wanted to try this again with a different color and alter my method a bit because this hack would be so useful if it were successful. This time around, I went with that brilliant blue color because blue pigments are often finicky in high pH environments, and I'm also going to add the watercolor to my soap after I've brought it to trace in a probably futile attempt to prevent too much of the lye reacting with the watercolor. Adding the watercolor, you can see how lovely that vibrant brilliant blue is. It didn't get chunky or do anything weird on me. If you're going to do this at home, make sure to discount your water to account for the watercolor soup. As I'm blending it, you have my permission to witness this fascinating color change as the pigment adapts to the high pH environment. I thought this hack was in the bin at this point because both of the soaps had changed color. Violently. But despite that, I kind of dig this color. I never thought I would call rust beautiful, but this red is such an earthy hue and I kind of really like it. Those 2 soaps are going to join their siblings in the closet for a couple days. Alright, results. Remember how it looked like gravy of the foulest brown? Well, look at this. You're probably thinking I switched soaps on you, but I didn't. Over the past couple days, the color slowly returned to the nice pink salmon color it was meant to be. I'm going to give it a little wash to see how it performs, and it performs just like soap that's a few days old, so not very well. But most importantly, I wanted to see if any of that red dye would tint the leather, and it didn't. I want to look at the blue one. The blue soap underwent the most dramatic transformation in my opinion. It went from a brilliant sky blue to bright rust to purple to a rich, cool toned indigo. Let's give it a bath. Just keep in mind that 1 full pan of Crayola watercolor is inside the soap, so it's twice as pigmented as it should be. Lathering it up, I was honestly pretty surprised at that white foam. It looks like the blue soap gets a pass too. For the price breakdown, micas and other soap colorants can cost around $4 to $6 Canadian per 10 grams. I got these Crayola watercolors from Michaels for $2.99 with a 30% discount. We get 8 pans of color that contain about 4 grams of coloring each, so you're saving $4 every 10 grams. This hack works surprisingly well, and the amount that you save using Crayola over micas cannot be overstated. The caveat is that the watercolors interact with the lye to some extent, so the soap may or may not be softer depending on the degree of that. The colors may also yield inconsistent results because of the varying properties of different pigments. I give this hack 4.5 stars. Not too shabby. Hack number 2. Glitter is crazy expensive, so make your own. I'm stealing this hack from the bakers, and it only uses 3 ingredients: unflavored gelatin, food dye, and water. If you're vegan, swapping the gelatin with agar-agar or gum arabic should work just fine.
I don't know, that's what the bakers said.
What you'll want to do is bloom 2 packets or 2 tablespoons of gelatin in cold water, making sure all the gelatin gets its fair share of H2O. Then melt it in the microwave until steamy and there are no crystals. Don't overdo the heat or you might break the protein matrix of the gelatin. Add a couple drops of your desired color and stir to combine. I'm using gel food coloring because the color is a lot more potent. If you have micas or some leftover Crayola watercolor pigments, go ahead and use them instead if you want. Or if you don't want, the world is your pickle. Once your glitter goo is given the Technicolor treatment, pour it onto a sheet of parchment or silicone, and definitely not aluminum foil because you'll never have any way of getting it off. Spread it out quite thin and leave it to dry for at least a day. Once it's dried, peel it off, crumple it up, and blend it to pieces. After a minute on the loudest blender setting, you have nice sparkly homemade biodegradable glitter. This stuff looks awesome. Since each piece of glitter isn't, you know, a perfect hexagon like the glitter of bougie glitter manufacturers, it lends a rustic, cozy, homemade look to your soap, and you can actually get a lot of coverage out of this. Breaking down the price, I bought one box of Knox gelatin for $2.99 at Walmart, and each box contains 4 packets, and we used 2 for this recipe. That boils down to $1.50 Canadian for 20 grams of homemade biodegradable glitter. The same amount of glitter from the good glitter costs 65 Canadian, not including shipping. Now, that's admittedly a bit of an unfair comparison because the good glitter is one of the aforementioned bougie glitter manufacturers. A more comparable glitter is that of the Bio Glitter Sparkle variety that my soap and candle supplier Voyageur sells, which goes for $9.70 Canadian per 20 grams. You're saving $4 Canadian per 10 grams. This hack is cheap, simple, and so customizable. You can make all the colors of the rainbow, you can alter the blend time to get fine particles or larger particles, it's all up to you. The one drawback is it doesn't look perfect. The appearance is a lot more like glass flakes rather than glitter, and the sparkles are a bit underwhelming. Nevertheless, I rate this hack 4 stars. While we're playing with gelatin, hack number 3. Make your own embed molds out of Jello. This one sounds crazy, and trust me, it is. But I really wanted to see if there was a way this would work. First, you'll want to prepare your mold. For anything larger, you'll want to DIY a cardboard box and line it with parchment or plastic wrap. Grab whatever you want to make a mold of. I'm using butterscotch chips that are half-eaten and months old because that's all I could find lying in the back of the cupboard underneath 3 bags of icing sugar. Put them in the mold, impression side facing up, and keep buoyancy in mind. Prepare a recipe of Jello as instructed on the box, but only use half the water and make sure it's hotter than a shopping mall food court on Black Friday. Ensure all the gelatin is dissolved and the Jello solution is transparent, then pour gently into your mold. In hindsight, this gelatin is pretty hot and chocolate melts when exposed to hot, but since chocolate chips contain soy lecithin, they keep their lovely chocolatey chip shape. The molds go into the Pluto simulator to chill for half an hour, and then you get to witness the arduous and kind of pathetic task of removing a sensitive gelatin mold from a cupcake liner that doesn't want to let go of it. Remove your embed impersonators and then put the mold to the test with some melt and pour. Make sure the melt and pour cools to 30 degrees Celsius so you don't melt the mold. Let it sit for a while, and on unmolding them, they do kind of look like they've been freshly sucked on. The texture is a bit off-putting, but look at that! Side by side, they kind of do resemble the butterscotch chips on the left. Doing this in the future, I would actually allow the Jello to dry for a day or 2 to firm up a bit and hold its shape better. Breaking down the cost, I got this box of Jello from Walmart for $1.27, and I got 2 little cupcake molds out of it. A similar amount of silicone mold maker, like the one I used to make the gumdrops for my gingerbread soap, costs roughly $7.
Actually, that's incorrect. It costs roughly $5, so you save $3.73 every time Christmas calculates a number and uses me, a robot, to speak for him. Ha 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 ho. Whoops.
The hack definitely needs improving though. I got some wonky chocolate chips out of it, so the potential is there. But would you see me trying this hack again in the future? I don't think so, and for that, I'm giving it 1 star. Hack number 4. The milk frother is the new stick blender. Don't get me wrong, the stick blender has its place in the SOAPMAKERS inventory. It's powerful and emulsifies batter very quickly, but it can be pretty pricey, especially when you need to buy a new one every couple years. Enter the milk frother. Think of the milk frother like the little brother to the stick blender. It's less powerful and takes a little longer to get the job done, but you don't need to pay as much. I like to use my frother with batches smaller than a kilogram of oils, and it only takes a minute or 2 to come to trace. Give it a try, save yourself some cash, you won't regret it. The cheapest milk frothers are about 1/3 of the price of the cheapest stick blenders, which means you'll be saving $21 by using the milk frother. I'll rate this hack 5 stars for batches with a kilogram of oils or less, and for anything larger, the time you spend blending becomes important, so 3 stars. Hack number 5. Buy the longest loaf mold you can get. This one is a bit self-explanatory, so I'll keep it brief. Instead of cluttering your closet with many loaf molds of many different sizes, spend money buying one good long loaf mold instead. Then, if you want to do a half, quarter, or 1/8 size batches, you can adjust the length of the mold using a cardboard dam. You'll want a sturdy piece of cardboard for this task. Measure the width of your loaf mold, mine is exactly 3 inches wide, and cut out a rectangle with that width. You want to be pretty precise with your measurements and your angles, since the sides of the cardboard will be be hugging the silicone tight. Wrap it tightly in parchment or plastic wrap so it can be reused over and over. After you've placed it inside the mold, give it a test and push it with your finger. It should not budge. If it moves even slightly, then it might not be structurally sound once you pour dense soap batter into the mold. Here you go, you now have infinite loaves with infinite different sizes whenever you please. The one caveat is that you need a rigid container for your mold to sit in, like this wooden box my mold came with. Otherwise, the cardboard dam might not hold properly. This is probably the hack on this list that I use the most, because I normally make 4 bars of soap at a time. I got my loaf mold from Amazon for $40 US, or roughly $54 Canadian. I don't really have anything to compare the savings to because there are like billions of soap molds, but I'll give this hack a solid 5 stars. Now, once you've made your soap, you're going to need to cut it. That brings us to my next hack. Hack number 6. Break out the toolbox and DIY your own soap cutter. There's no way around it. Soap cutters are expensive. Who knew some plywood and a wire would break the bank? Now, granted, you don't need a soap cutter. You can just use a knife, but the cuts can be pretty inconsistent and uneven. That's why I've invented a homemade soap cutter for you to try out for yourselves, and you don't even need an engineering degree. You'll want a shot for a 2x1/4 inch bolt, 4 hexagonal 1/4 inch nuts, 4 flat 1/4 inch washers, and a couple metal rulers that have the hole in the end. I recommend getting one with a cardboard backing and one without. If you can only find rulers with the cardboard backing, you can try scraping off the cardboard for 40 minutes with a box cutter, rubbing alcohol, vinegar, and elbow grease, only to give up and forget such an option ever existed. Seriously, what military grade adhesive do they use for these things? To assemble the soap cutter, grab your bolt and screw it up all the way to the very end. Then goes in a washer, and then the ruler without the cardboard backing. This is the ruler that will be used to cut the soap. Throw another washer in there and secure everything with a nut to keep it nice and snug. If you find this section comes loose really easily, use 2 nuts instead. Starting from the ruler that would be cutting the soap, measure along the bolt the width that you'd like your soap to be. I like mine to be 1 inch thick, so I'll be going with exactly 1.174 inches. That's the part of the bolt you'll want to screw the out-facing part of your next nut down to. Place another washer and then finally secure your last ruler with your last washer and your last nut, making sure the cardboard part of the ruler is facing inwards. Actually put a second nut on the very end just to keep the rulers as parallel as they could be. And here you have your very own size adjustable DIY soap cutter. Let's put it to the test. I've got some leftover soap from my previous video that I've kept for this project. It's been gelled in the oven and 48 hours old, so it's a little hard for cutting. Now, this was my first time using this device, so bear with me. As the ruler cuts through the meat of the soap, the whole apparatus sort of lifts up and affects the straightness of the cut. I didn't want to hold the rulers down very tightly because I wear skin and rulers are sharp. Alright. Let's evaluate the cut. It's really not as bad as I was expecting. Aside from that little angle in the bottom third, I think it turned out okay. I'm going to try another soap because I want to better my technique. I made sure this time to really hold the fulcrum as close to my table as my poor palms could muster, and would you look at that? That looks like an almost perfect cut to me. And look, no striations, no knife imprints, but how much did it cost? I got the rulers from Dollarama for $2 each, and the fasteners from Canadian Tire. The one bolt was 43 cents, the 4 nuts plus the extra one were 85 cents, and the 4 washers were 60 cents, so that works out to $5.88 Canadian. Let's round it up to 6. My wire soap cutter is from Amazon, and I bought it for a ridiculous $54 Canadian. That means you're saving $63 by making your own soap cutter using my method. Even if you buy one of the cheaper soap cutters like this one for $18, you're still saving $12. Sounds like a steal to me. Is there room for adjustments, particularly in the comfortability department? Yes. I couldn't imagine doing this 16 times for a full loaf of soap. But does it work? Absolutely. If you're an engineering or DIY aficionado, you've probably got some recommendations on how to improve this design, so please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. I'm going to give this hack 4.5 stars. Almost perfect, but needs a couple tweaks. Hack number 7. Turn melt and pour into gel soap. This is an inexpensive alternative to Bath & Body Works if you want some gel soap without making your wallet cry. You'll want to melt down some melt and pour. I'm taking a little embed I'm never going to use again because it sweats, and make sure you take down the weight so you can dilute it with 5 parts water. Add up to 2% of your preferred fragrance, add some mica, customize it however you like, and allow the solution to cool to room temperature. Just like Martha Stewart, I've already prepared some earlier so we don't have to wait a few hours. Once gelled, it's a little firm, so give it a gentle stir and it's ready to put in a repurposed soap bottle for use. Make sure you're using an actual soap bottle and not a hand sanitizer dispenser like I used. It'll save you a whole lot of mess and frustration. I'll put this one to the test for you, and rest assured, if you use a proper soap bottle, then the soap will come out properly. Also, don't make it white. Gross. Lathering it up, it works pretty nicely, and depending on your melt and pour base, you'll still get a lot of bubbles despite it being diluted. Let's check those dollar signs. A big jug of soft soap from Walmart goes for 40 cents per 100 grams. The same weight of my homemade gel soap would contain around 17 grams of melt and pour base, which costs around 24 cents. 2% of fragrance doubles the price to 50 cents per 100 grams. So, Walmart soft soap is cheaper, but you can't customize it, and the soft soap fragrances are just okay. What if we're talking about Bath & Body Works here? Standard gel hand soap from Bath & Body Works goes for $3.79 per 100 grams, so making the soap yourself saves you $3.30 Canadian per 100 grams. Go ahead and give this a try. It's a good way to use up embeds that you have no idea what to do with, and you also get to customize the colors and fragrances to your liking, which is a bonus. Not everyone has access to melt and pour though, and the consistency isn't perfect, so I'll give it 3 stars. Hack number 8. Turn dish soap into foamy soap. This one blew my mind because I wasn't even sure if it was going to work. All you need is a recycled foamy soap dispenser and some unscented clear dish soap. Measure out 1 part of dish soap into a measuring cup. And measure out 4 parts of water. Before you marry the two, add up to 2% of your favorite fragrance into the dish soap. I'm using vanilla bean marshmallow because smelling like a sweet sugary confection distracts from the terrible saltiness from within. The fragrance oil will interact with the soap and make it turn opaque. That's when it's time to add the water. You can mix everything together all at once, but doing it that way might cause some of the fragrance oil to separate and float to the top. Add whatever amount of your favorite color. If you have some leftover Crayola watercolors, now's a great time to add it, and make sure you're using a dye for the colorant. Powders and oxides might work, but micas are too heavy and will just separate and sink to the bottom over time. Bottle it in your recycled soap bottle, and voila! You have your very own Bath & Body Works foaming soap. And look at how well it works. A bottle of foaming hand soap from Bath & Body Works will run you $7.95 Canadian into the red, or about $3 per 100 grams. I picked up this unscented dish soap from a chain grocery store here in Western Canada for $3.59 Canadian, or 67 cents per 100 grams. Add on to that the cost of the fragrance, and that'll be $1.17 Canadian for the recipe alone. But what about the cost of the bottle? Shouldn't I take that into account? Since you can reuse the bottles for at least a year or two, I'll break the price of 1 bottle over 24 refills. It costs $7 Canadian for this foaming bottle from Amazon, so that's 29 cents per refill. That boils down to a total cost of $1.29 Canadian. Of all the hacks on this list, this one is probably my favorite, to be honest. I love foamy hand soaps, and to have one of my own that I can make whenever I want, however I like, causes dopamine to excrete from within the ridges of my brain. The only thing you don't have a lot of flexibility with is the color, but who cares? 5 stars, easy. By the way, these last 2 hacks we tried leave the fragrance on your skin really well. You've got to try at least one of them. Hack number 9. You can get great product shots with your phone. I know, you don't believe me. There's no way you can get good product photography straight from your phone, and you're kinda right. But there are some shortcuts you can take to really bump up your product photos to a semi-professional tier, and you don't even need to spend $1,000 on a camera, a lens, and lighting to do so. Here's my cherry blossom soap, and she's ready for her close-up. All you need is a flat surface to act as your background, I'm using my table, and turn all your lights off or shut the blinds. Activate the flash on your phone, and get the soap nice and squared. Then snap your picture. Crop the photo and fiddle with the adjustments. I like to boost the exposure a bit and add a vignette. And here we have a pretty reasonable shot. You can play around with your backgrounds and environments to improve the look. Try your kitchen counter. That doesn't work? Try the bathroom counter. That doesn't work? Make your own photography studio out of paper. Put a table up to the wall with a blank sheet of paper where you're going to put the soap. Tape another sheet of paper behind the soap, and voila! You have yourself that bougie minimalist approach. Is the white background too bare? Print out a brick texture and use that instead. Don't like bricks? Try marble. You do you, and you'll love it too. I can't really do a proper price breakdown for this hack because pretty much everyone owns a smartphone these days, so it's free, I guess? As far as effectiveness, I think it's a great hack that you can actually get some darn good results from for your Etsy shop, your Instagram, your website, whatever. The only thing you can't really get rid of is that annoying flash shadow. I'll give this hack 4.5 stars. So there we have 9 life hacks for broke soap makers. Some of them fun, some of them helpful, and some of them completely ridiculous. But wait, we've still got a bonus hack to uncover. I asked you all last week about which soap making expense you think is the most overpriced, and nearly half of you said fragrance. This next hack is for those people. Before we get to it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you can stay notified of when I upload moronic things. Speaking of moronic, bonus hack. Fragrance is expensive, so use Febreze. That's right. I'm gonna extract the fragrance from these cheap Febreze wall fragrance refills and use it in my soap. Now, you might be thinking, Chris, isn't that dumb? Yes. That's why I've separated this from my other hacks, because this one is more for show rather than actual practicality. I do not recommend mixing unknown chemicals with soap. However, we can see the only ingredient here is pure fragrance, so that puts me at ease a little bit since a violent reaction between pure fragrance and soap is probably impossible. But there's a first for everything. As you can see, this giant warning label clearly states that the fragrance is an eye irritant and to avoid contact with eyes and skin. Most aromatic compounds, even those intended for soap making, are irritating to the skin and eyes, poisonous, and potentially allergenic. That's why each fragrance you'd buy from a reputable source come with an IFRA sheet, which tells you what % of the fragrance is allowed in your soap or candle product. We don't have an IFRA sheet for this fragrance, so I'm gonna have to test that out for myself. First step is extracting the fragrance. Just to be safe, I'm wearing eye protection and latex gloves. I easily pop the fragrance stick thing off with some pliers so that precious fragrance is ready to extract. I'm gonna measure 1 drop of fragrance into 1 cupcake liner and 5 drops of fragrance into the other. To each of those liners, I'll add enough canola oil to dilute them to 1% and 5% respectively, to simulate real-life usage rates. I'm adding 1 drop of the 5% mixture to one wrist, 1 drop of the 1% mixture to the other wrist, and putting a drop of pure canola oil on each wrist to act as the control. I then left those patches for 10 minutes and then rinsed my wrists. Just remember that fragrance in soap is usually washed down the drain, and most of it doesn't actually stick to your hands. So letting these fragrances sit on my hands for 10 minutes should give me a definite idea if the fragrance would cause irritation or not. After 10 minutes, nothing happened. I also have very sensitive skin, and my fingers are wrinkly, eczema-prone noodles, so I expected some redness. But look, nothing. Again, I just want to reiterate that nothing about this is scientific. I do not recommend doing this. Let me put myself in harm so you don't have to. Thank you. I've prepared a small batch of oils that I'm going to add my Skin 80 liquid to. The two get blendified with my swirly twirly, and then I add 5% of fragrance. This is where it can all go wrong. Will it rise? Will it seize? Will it separate? Will I implode? And the answer to all of those is surprisingly no. This fragrance was honestly so well behaved. It didn't even accelerate the batter a tiny bit. Like, what? Enough soap was made for 2 little cupcakes, and those 2 little cupcakes get put in the closet to sleep and saponify. So a few days later, and here's the result. My apartment wasn't set on fire, I didn't die of poisonous gas, and everything worked out. What I will say is that the soap was quite soft. I'm sure if I let it sit for a week or so, it would harden up because sometimes fragrances do have a tendency to move things along slowly. Who would have thunk this fragrance would have worked? Like, better than an actual soap fragrance? I'll wash with it in my bowl of warm water specially prepared for this video. I obviously would have let this cure longer, so like the Crayola soaps, don't expect much from the lather or hardness from what you're seeing right now. But it smells exactly like how it went in, and it's strong. Honestly, you could probably use this for my foamy and gel soap hacks as well. This is crazy. What's crazier is how much we're saving. 30 grams of fragrance from my local soap and candle shop Voyageur will cost me around $4 Canadian. I bought the wall refills from Dollarama for half the price at $2, and it gets me 26 grams. So you're saving $170 Canadian per 30 grams, or a whole $5 every 15 bars of soap. This hack kinda blew my mind. I was not expecting it to work this well. The soap did end up a bit soft, so I'll post a community update in a week or two just to show how the soap's doing and to see if it'll firm up a bit. Ignoring all the safety risks associated with using unknown fragrances in your soap, you can actually save a ton of money doing this. Obviously, you're limited on what fragrances you can use because Febreze has like 5 fragrances. But still, I'm giving this hack 5 stars. So which hack was your favorite? Will you try any of these hacks now that you've seen them? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for sticking around to the very end. If you want more soapy content, feel free to binge this playlist here. Want to know how to make the cheapest soap possible? It's in there. But nonetheless, that was a soap journey with the Soap Universe. Thank you for watching. Bubble bye.